You are live.
We're live.
Hey,
Okay.
good morning. This is Dulcimoon Talk with Holly Tannen today. We got two West Coast dulcimer divas here talking together,
Mhm.
and I'm really excited to have Holly with us today. She's actually the first actual dulcimer teacher I ever had. Did you know that, Holly?
I know it because you told me. And that was at the Freight and Salvage
Is
Coffee
it the
House?
Freight and Salvage? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Where are you right now, Holly?
I am right now in Mendocino, east of Mendocino town.
Mhm. Okay. And wow, Blondell is really singing there.
He's going. Yep.
Going. He's going. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to add your story to all
Mhm.
of these that we have. Um, we like to know things about, you know, where you started. And I remember
Mhm.
you said you got your first dulcimer when you were 17. It was a
Mhm.
gift from someone.
Yeah. I realized I'm 77 now, and I got my first dulcimer for my 17th birthday. And this would have been 1963 or
Oh
something.
my.
I was a freshman at Berkeley. um, I met a young man who played a kind of fake lute, and um, he became my first boyfriend. And he had met, he had been to the Berkeley Folk Festival the year before I got there, and met Jean Ritchie, danced with her. He was very proud of that, and got interested in the dulcimer. And he asked me, "Would you like me to make you a dulcimer?" I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it was a musical instrument, but he's going to make me something for my birthday. Okay. And he explained what it was, and he made one, put it on my lap. I was confused at first, of course, because the bass string is far away from you on the dulcimer. I'd been playing classical guitar and then Joan Baez style guitar, where the bass string is close to you. But once I got that sorted out, and you just play on the one string, the string that's close to you, and it was so easy compared to guitar. I'd never, with the guitar, I couldn't get my fingers around the fingerboard, very small hands.
Mhm.
And so I kind of gradually over time gave up. I'd been playing Elizabethan music, Dowland. I kind of gave that up. I transposed or made arrangements of a couple of the Dowland and early Elizabethan tunes for dulcimer. But mostly I just played on the one string. And it was so easy. And the other thing was, I have a lisp. I've always had a lisp. And at that age, 17, I was so self conscious. I couldn't go into a store and ask. I went without a wastebasket for my first year of college because I couldn't bring myself to go into the five and dime store and ask for a wastebasket. And but I started going up to campus. There was a low wall on Bancroft Way, and I would sit on the wall with the dulcimer with a specific intention. I was just playing, and people would come up and ask me about it, and I could answer them. So I used the dulcimer as a way to learn how to connect with people.
Aw. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Uh, I I was just trying to remember. I don't think I ever met another dulcimer player till years later. Uh, there were one. I don't think there were any dulcimer. One or two dulcimer records. And there were Jean Ritchie's records and her dulcimer book, and that's how I learned. I never learned from another person. Um, so
But
I
you were playing classical guitar.
I
So
had been, yeah,
music had been part of your life. How long,
yes.
when did music become a major part of your life?
Well, I was raised in New York, and my father wanted me to play classical music, so of course I didn't. And when I discovered Greenwich Village and folk music, that's what I wanted to do. And Dave Van Ronk was my the person I loved the most. And Joan Baez's first album came out, Bob Dylan's album came out right about that time, and my father hated this stuff, and so that was perfect. You know, I didn't have to get a tattoo or learn to skateboard or anything. That was enough to annoy my father. And I'd go around the house singing the Joan Baez songs at the top of my lungs. But I couldn't really get the guitar part right. So when I found the dulcimer, I transferred up to Reed College in Oregon, and great way to avoid studying was to sit on my bed with the dulcimer on my lap. Oh, I didn't tell you the good story. So my boyfriend, whose name was Jody Mitchell, made me a dulcimer. He didn't have any way of bending the sides, what it takes, the heated whatever it is to bend the sides. So he got thin strips of veneer, and the sides of the dulcimer were made out of the veneer, and that worked fine until we decided to go to the UCLA Folk Festival. And we're sitting in the airplane, and the vibrations of the plane made the veneer pull away from the body of the instrument. So we called the stewardess over, and she thought about it, and she went and got us 4 Band-Aids. And we held the dulcimer together for long enough to hang out at the UCLA Folk Festival.
Wow.
Now, eventually, that year I transferred up to Reed College, and there was a professor English professor named John Rausch, and he was making dulcimers, so he made me one, that held together, and that was my primary playing instrument for many years.
Did that have geared tuners or friction?
Yes, I think it had the early geared tuners. Yeah, friction pegs I could never deal with.
Yeah. That's one of the things that removes me from the real traditionalists. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell anybody who comes to me with one of those that they should change them, but that is an option.
That's a nice way of saying it. I'm not that politic.
I know.
Some real tuners on there.
So what was Reed College? Why did you choose to go up there from Berkeley? I mean, that's got to be quite the change.
Yeah, well, Berkeley, there would be 800 people in my primatology class, right? And this was the year before the free speech movement. And so I was very alienated. Everything was done they had one computer that took up a whole building, and everything was done on these computer cards. And I was so alienated that I didn't realize that everybody else was alienated too. That's part of how alienation works, right? The year after, when I went up to Reed, that's when the free speech movement took place. And they had these slogans like, "Do not bend, fold, and mutilate me," because they felt like they were being treated as objects.
Right.
So Reed was more a small liberal arts college. And so I went up there. But it was really hard. I lasted a year and a half up there, sitting on my bed practicing instead of studying. I wouldn't call practicing, playing the songs off the Judy Collins records.
So academia wasn't doing it for you.
I wasn't doing it for academia. I was still terribly shy, and I don't know how best to say this. Reed was too hard for me.
Okay.
It really was. So, and this was the 60s, right? So in Berkeley, all this political stuff was happening. The psychedelic revolution was happening. I had another guy I'd met there that I wanted to be with. So I dropped out of Reed after a year and a half. And I did the drop in, drop out, drop in, drop. It took about 7 years to get my bachelor's degree. But by the last year, my last semester, I saw on campus a group of people playing fiddles and banjos and guitar. They were called Dr. Humbeed's New Tranquility String Band. And 2 fiddles. And it was a beautiful, beautiful sound, Southern fiddle music. And I wanted to play that music. But they were very good players and kind of snobby. And the attitude that I ran into, maybe not from them, but from other people, was, you can't do this on a dulcimer. They would say, dulcimer, you're stuck in one key, and all you can do is thack, dum da da dum da da. So you're going to destroy the rhythm of what we're playing, and you can't play along with us. Well, sometime around then, I got a car and I drove down to Big Sur for the Big Sur Folk Festival at Esalen Institute. And the thing I remember is one day I was sitting outside the front porch, Esalen, me and the raccoons, and I had been playing the dulcimer tune DAD, what we now call West Coast Mixolydian, West Coast Mixolydian. And I'm glad it didn't break, but I somehow got the idea of tuning the middle string up to D. So the middle string tuned to the same note as my top string, and then the bottom string D an octave below. Much brighter sound. I could play everything that I'd played before, except that I couldn't play any notes on the middle string. Most people who play this West Coast Mixolydian can go below the first note of the scale, play notes on the middle string. Well, I couldn't do that, but I didn't need to, because I was hoping to play with fiddle players and banjo players, let them take the melody. And I was just playing, in this tuning, backup. And what I discovered was, with all three strings tuned the same like this, this is not how can I do this? I'm gonna have to put it on my lap to do this.
Okay.
But if I put three fingers across any three strings, I would get the chord of that note. How's that? So if I'm tuned D, D, and D, I put three fingers across on G, I get a G chord. Slide that up to the fourth fret, I've got an A chord. So it's really simple, and I don't have to think about where I'm putting my fingers. I just take this three-finger position, third fret is G, fourth fret is A, fifth fret is B. Then my thumb was free to the right of that chord, and I could twiddle. So when I started, I found a band that was happy to have me play with them. They were called the Contra Costa County Contrapuntal Banjo Band. Dave Ricker was the organizer. It was mostly in his living room, his and his wife's living room. And I did what players have traditionally done. I'd kind of sit far back when I was unsure of myself. As gradually I learned the tunes, I would sneak closer and closer in. And with dance music like this, you play each tune for a long time, which gives you a lot of time to learn the chords, and it's pretty boring. So that's where I started adding in the little twiddles with the thumb to decorate it.
Right.
And it could sort of be heard in the band, and it sort of couldn't. And it fit in the same range as the mandolin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's fantastic. And you're describing something that I've seen, like at our local, the Starry Plow, Berkeley, right? Mm-hmm. They have an Irish session every Sunday. And for those of you who may not have been to these things, there's like an inner circle of people, and they're invited by the leader to be in that inner circle because they know all the tunes and they can play anything.
Yeah.
And then the next circle out is, like the next level players that they might not know everything, but they can play a little bit. And then you go further and further and further out until you have the people who've never played this stuff bufore, and they're trying to figure out what the heck they're doing.
Yep,
right?
Yeah.
And only the people in the middle circle get fed beer by the bar. Everybody else has to buy their own beer.
Okay. Well, you're making it sound more formal than I remember it being, but that is the structure.
Yeah,
and that's the structure I've seen in European village music. Too. The beginners sit on the outside, and then they gradually move their chairs closer and closer in. Mm-hmm. And you'll see the same thing like at Lark Camp, music camp here.
Right. Lark in the Morning is a wonderful week-long camp.
Week-long
in the Mendocino area, and everything, all folk music is represented there.
Of the world. And yes. I'll be teaching dulcimer there again this year. I've been teaching dulcimer there since 1982.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You also have recently been working with a smaller local festival, right?
Yeah, what happened is the plague happened, COVID, and it felt like, oh my gosh, we couldn't do Lark for a couple of years. what's going to happen to the traditional music scene? Well, people ensured that it would happen. They created a nonprofit, and then a group of people who play English music. They call themselves the Story Wrens, and they live down in Occidental. And they thought, wouldn't it be great? Not everybody can afford 8 days in the woods. Not everybody wants to camp out. Could we do a one-day festival where we have teach all these various instruments and styles? And we've done that for 2 years now. Occidental is just west of Santa Rosa. And I taught dulcimer the first year there.
So all of this we're talking about is in Northern California, like Contra Costa County, as you referred to. That's closer to the bay, and then you're up more in the North Coast area. Occidental is kind of halfway between.
Yeah, it's just west of Santa Rosa, so it's between San Francisco and Mendocino.
Mendocino, right. So fantastic. Well, talk to me a little bit about what you've been doing with
there's a couple more stories I want to. Pardon me?
Are you retired from teaching? Are you teaching?
I am not teaching. If someone were to come to me and want to learn, I would teach them. I've been doing a lot more singing than I have playing. As I've gotten older and I have arthritis in my thumbs. So, but the main thing that I would like to go back first, because I got a story that I think, a couple of stories that are important.
Okay, great.
The first is, I was living down in Berkeley, then I moved to a horse ranch in Novato, and was just playing for myself. And then Joni Mitchell released her album Blue, where she played the dulcimer that Joellen Lapidus had made for her. And all these young women started wanting to play the dulcimer. Actually, this happened while I was still in Berkeley, I think. And yeah, because I started having people who wanted to learn. My first student, in fact, was Sharon Chisholm from Mountain View, Arkansas. She had a McSpadden dulcimer because she was from Mountain View. And I didn't want to teach. I didn't know how to teach, but she insisted that I teach her because she wanted to learn. And then I said, oh, I can do this. Other young women started wanting to play. They wanted to learn to play like Joni Mitchell, which I couldn't figure out how to do. And so I couldn't teach them that. I'll come back to that in a bit. No, I'll say it now so I won't forget it. I could not figure out how to play what Joni Mitchell was playing. Since then, I've seen tab for that style, and I can't read tab. So I never did learn to play that style. But one of my young students, she was about 9 up here. Her name was Sarah Rose. She wanted to learn to play Joni Mitchell style. I said, I don't know how to do that. She got on YouTube, and there was a tutorial how to play Joni Mitchell style, and she taught herself from the YouTube video. And that thrilled me, because why did we take up writing down notes or tablets or on a piece of paper? Well, how do you get musical information across a long distance? Before the age of tape recorders or any kind of recorded music, you had to make some kind of written approximation of what you played, give it to somebody, and hope they could figure out what you meant from those fly specks, as Pete Seeger called them. But now that we have first cassettes and CDs, and now especially videos, how many dulcimer tutorials are there on YouTube? So you can watch somebody play. Right. And that has opened up, I think, a lot of worlds for a lot of people.
Well, and records come out that had that on it. Gene Ritchie, of course, was recorded with Oscar Brand. I know that's the way that my husband, Buffalo, learned about Gene Ritchie. And that inspired him and his friend Lauren, who was also from LA. She built his first dulcimer. So it's really interesting how these things, the cross-pollination that happens when you get media involved. I mean, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I know that an awful lot of teenage youngsters have learned how to play guitar based on listening to their favorite records. but us dulcimer players didn't have as much. And
there
now,
was very little. There was Gene Ritchie. There was a record by Judy Mahan. There's one guy. There were like 3 or 4 dulcimer records, or records that had a little bit of dulcimer on them. They
right,
weren't easy to find.
right,
But from a folklorist point of view, the music is live, and then at some point it gets fixed in a medium, and then people take up the medium and they take the tunes and songs off the medium and put them back into oral tradition. I should say, as a folklorist, being at Lark all those years inspired me to go to graduate school in folklore. This was at Berkeley with Alan Dundes. I didn't do anything with the dulcimer in graduate school. I was just focusing on traditional ballads. And that would have been the dulcimer. They had one hanging in a glass case in the music department, but I never made that connection with them. I was just working on the songs in the folklore department, which was the next building over.
right. I've loved your recordings.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried to record in a way. It's not easy to record a dulcimer, as you know, because of the way the sound comes out. So it takes a sound tech who really knows, like Scott Fraser, who recorded Ruth and Cynthia. I got to bring them in because although I didn't know any dulcimer players in Berkeley, I was invited one year, I think it would have been 71, to the San Diego Folk Festival. And Gene Ritchie was there, and I was there. And then 3 young women came up to me, Lori Cole, Lori Riven, and Ruth Bienenfeld. And Ruth gave me a budded rose, this bright red rose, and nobody had ever done anything like that. And I was charmed, and they were all 3 aspiring dulcimer players, and I gave Ruth some lessons at McCabe's in LA. And she had just been playing on the 1 string, the way people did back then. And I showed her the movable chord, the 3 fingers on any fret that I just showed you. And that opened up a world for her of playing chords, of playing Elizabethan music. She met up with Cynthia Smith, who had been studying with Randy Wilkinson, who was doing very complex Elizabethan and Renaissance tunes on the dulcimer. And Cynthia learned from him. And she and her partner Dale made the beautiful dulcimers that you've seen here on the show. So when Ruth and Cynthia took up together, they were doing things that it just went into 3 dimensions, what they were playing, way beyond what I could have imagined before I heard them.
Mm-hmm. Well, each person, I think, that takes it up finds a way to play it for themselves.
Yeah.
Because so few of us actually learned from other people.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
We had to take whatever musicality we already had.
Yeah.
and apply it as best we could to what we needed. I mean, you say that you didn't use the dulcimer when you were studying the ballads, but what you did do was apply it to some of those ballads and record them.
Oh, I did continue to play, but I didn't make any kind of academic connection with the dulcimer.
Got it. Okay, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so when was that you went back for graduate work?
Well, before that, let's move backward in time again. In 1973, I got invited to play at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. Ooh. And they had an area called the Dulcimer Grove, which wasn't just dulcimers, but it was the soft, quiet music that wasn't really main stage, loud, raucous stuff. And I was staying with a woman who also put up an English singer named Frankie Armstrong.
Oh my
goodness. She was a ballad singer from London who was a social worker. She'd written a song about one of her clients who died of a methadone overdose. And we were sitting around the kitchen table, and it was a minor song, so I put the dulcimer in the Aeolian minor, and backed up the song, and we played it a few times, and by Saturday night, we were playing it on main stage at the largest folk festival in the United States. Wow. And those were the kind of connections, that's the kind of connection that happens when a bunch of musicians get together. Yep. So the dulcimer was such a perfect instrument to back her up, and her vision the ballads, traditional songs that told stories as women's history. Women mostly were kept illiterate. So how did they pass on their wisdom? Through traditional songs. They warned their daughters about young men, and they told these stories. And the dulcimer was perfect for backing her up. We invited a third woman, Susie Rothfield, her name was then. She's Susie Thompson now. And so Susie and I backed up Frankie, and we toured all over the US. We did 2 tours. That was my experience of fame. Because we were an idea that time had come. It's really, let's hear these songs as women's history. And the dulcimer having always been a women's instrument, was perfect for that.
It's interesting that you should say that. The dulcimer always having been a woman's instrument. Tell me about that statement.
Well, what can I say about it? Of course it wasn't always, because Jean learned from her father, Bayless Ritchie. There were plenty of men who played, if you read her books. But I've always thought of it as women were discouraged from playing other instruments, I think. I'm making generalizations that I don't want to make here, because if I'm talking about the Appalachians, I haven't been there. But I can't give any facts or anything to back this up. It's my sense that it's an instrument that women gravitate toward because, I know why, because if you take up guitar or violin or something like that, there are a lot of hot dog guy players who can make you feel really intimidated. And there wasn't anybody with a dulcimer to intimidate them.
Okay. I had heard a rumor that in the churches in the southern regions and in the Appalachians, it was the only instrument that a woman was allowed to play in the church.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and that was probably before pianos were.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just what I've heard. So.
Well, let's ask around. Let's find.
We will. Let's start asking around
other women and find out what is the history of the dulcimer, the gender history of the dulcimer as it was in your part of the world.
Right. Good questions to ask.
Yeah.
All right. So we have gone through. We went from 63 to 73, and then the Philadelphia one.
Okay. Well, I had heard 2 English singers at Philadelphia I'd heard ballads sung mostly by older women who had lost much of their voice quality. Well, here I heard Frankie, and the very powerful singer influenced by the Balkan singers and by Peggy Seeger and Ewan McCall, and she really belted her songs out. And I also heard Martin Carthy. He had both of them had versions of songs that were much longer, more complex, and more magical, and less expurgated than the American versions I had heard. And Martin Carthy had a guitar style that I'd never heard anything like. It was not normal tuning. It was tuned to either D-A-D, G-A-D, Dad-Gad, or different other tunings that made it a lot like a dulcimer, because you could get, just by strumming across it or picking it, what are called open tunings, a lot of resonance from the open strings. And also, after I'd heard him sing, I bought his album called Shearwater, where he not only plays this modal guitar with what I call a rolling drone, but on 2 cuts, he played dulcimer on top of it. And he played differently than anybody I'd ever heard. I'd mostly heard people play kind of tinkle-plunk, and he was just thwacking away at it. And with that, against his own guitar playing, I wanted to play like that. I wanted to play dulcimer the way he played guitar and the way he played dulcimer. So my style changed. Like from the moment I heard that album, Shearwater, I started really going for really strong playing. And I asked myself, why is nobody doing this with American traditional ballads? Now, it may have been the people were, and I just didn't have the connection with them. But I thought, well, I guess it's up to me. So I started taking the ballads that I knew and creating accompaniments that were like the accompaniments Carthy had, that were very strong and but simple. When thing of playing very simply when you're singing, and then you got a break in the action of the ballad, so that's where you do your fancy playing there. But I wanted to play the way he did, and I went to England. The other thing was I wanted to learn to perform, and in California, folk clubs are like 500 miles apart. You know, it's a long way to go for your $50. And I played in bands and played my head down and all this, but if I was going to connect with people, I had to learn how to perform, and I was not going to be able to get the apprenticeship I need in California. In England, every city of any size has 4 or 5 or 6 pubs that have a back room where there's a folk club. I mean, they have many more than 4 or 5 or 6 pubs, but some of them would have local folk clubs, and that would meet once a week, and they would hire a guest singer who would come from afar and was a professional singer. But then the locals would do what were called floor spots. Anybody could do 2 songs and get in for free. And that's what I needed. I would follow Martin Carthy around and some of the other well-known singers, and I would have my chance to practice in front of an audience. Here's my 2 songs. Here's the dulcimer. And I did this for a couple of years till I started getting bookings on my own. Met an English fiddler who played, his name was Pete Cooper. He played American West Virginia style fiddling, and I was already great at backing up fiddles. So we became a duo, and that worked very well because the dulcimer and the fiddle together are very powerful. Again, played backup. I was the back legs of the horse. I would drive the fiddle, and I never tried to play the melody itself. I'd let the fiddle players and the other guys, the hot dogs, do it.
Wow. Wow. That's fantastic. So I don't want to get too far afield before we start to look at, you had some stuff you wanted to share on your instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to encourage you to take your laptop camera down a little bit.
Okay.
And scoot back.
I'm going to scoot back.
Go ahead.
Here's the dulcimer that I played for many years. Let me say that again into your microphone. Here is a dulcimer that was made for me. The flower sound holes, Chris Troutwine made it, and I wanted flowers because of Martin Carthy's song, The Famous Flower of Serving Men. So he built this based on that. And this was my instrument for many years through England and when I came back here. Then I had a student up here, Sarah Rose. She was 9 and had a dulcimer that I thought was too big for her. So I saw online McSpadden was selling these, what they call ginger dulcimers, 3/4 size dulcimers. And I thought, well, I should get one of those for Sarah. I ordered it. I put it down on this very table, and it looked at me and it said, "No, I am yours." And actually, Sarah was quite happy with the dulcimer she had that was given to her by her best friend. So, but this dulcimer came tuned. I think those are, what notes are those? Well, the top note is G. Yeah, these 2 are G. I'm going to move back like you suggested.
Okay.
Where I've got 2 G's, and the top note is D, E, F, G. So it's in the Ionian tuning, which I'd never played in before. I'd always played in this West Coast Mixolydian, old Greek word.
Okay.
Where you go from the open string to the 7th fret with that flatted 7th, but with the extra fret, you got the sharp 7th if you wanted it.
Right.
I'd always played in that tuning, but here I started playing in Ionian. Let's get my head in there. That looks better. And since I'd always played in the Mixolydian, I mostly played 5ths. There's your open string. And it was a very spare, stark sound. And it was fine for backing up fiddles. But here, I started getting 3rds. This sweet sound that I'd never had in 50 years. So my style, once again, it changed once when I heard Martin Carthy, and it changed again when I got the ginger dulcimer and started playing. Well, of course, none of the chords that I knew fit, nothing that I had to restructure everything. I've been playing on this instrument for about 10 years, and I can still barely tell you what the chords are. There's a G, C, D, and back to G. But I don't really know where the notes are on this. I'm glad nobody's asked me. I just, I improvise. When I find something I like, I play it a couple times. I play it till I memorize it. But I don't really know what I'm doing. I just do something that sounds good. If it sounds good, I play it a couple times till I memorize it.
Well, that definitely solidifies the old saying attributed to old Joe Clark: there ain't no notes on a dulcimer, you just play them.
That's exactly right. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea that, you know, you need to be able to read tab. It's tablature isn't what's written down is not the music. What you're doing is making the music.
Yep.
Right.
And can I give my rant here?
Yes.
My rant is tablature is fine. It was a communications mechanism. But when Jean Ritchie first learned to play, her father wouldn't let her play because she was too young, right? So when he was gone, she'd sneak off behind the Davenport, the sofa, take down the dulcimer, and play. She said, I would just play any old way. So that's what I want to encourage you to do. Put the dulcimer on your lap, let it speak to you, and just play any old way. And tunes will come out. How do you learn them? You just break them down into little pieces of 3 or 4 or 5 notes, play them over and over again, and you will memorize them. People sometimes say to me, I have a bad memory. No, you haven't learned how to use your memory yet. Break things down into small pieces, learn those, do it over and over again. I don't know any other way to do it except over and over again, but it's so pretty you don't mind doing it over and over again.
You have something you want to play for us?
I do. Here's a song. It's one of my songs that I wrote during, we were just coming out of lockdown. And my friend and I finally felt it was safe to sit around this table and have a cup of tea. And he handed me his used tea bag. And on the little tag, it said, "Friendship is a sheltering tree." It was a quote from Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And so I took that, and I took a tune I'd been playing, which was Bold Riley, as sung by the Wailing Jennies and Kate Rusby. And the tune goes, maybe you can see I'm playing a lot on the bass string. I'm playing very simply, but I'm doing a lot of hammering on, pulling off, and twiddly bits. So I put new words to it. Sheltering tree, shielding us from wind and rain. Flying birds call you and me till the day we meet again. Friendship is a flowering tree, bud and blossom, branch and root, kind and kindred souls agree. Green the stem and deep the root.
cannot tell you how much I love that.
With Counterpoint by Blondell the Canary.
Yes, very much so. Well, we've got to wrap this up here, but where can people find you?
Well, hollytannen.com.
Okay.
Is a good way. They can find me teaching at Lark Camp. They can find me at the Occidental World Music and Dance Day, which will be next June. But I guess you mean online.
Yeah. So
hollytannen.com.
Okay. And do you have recordings there? Books?
Oh, yeah. Let me get you I'm going to get up to do this, but I'll get you my new recording. This is Crazy Laughter, 7 Years with the Spirit of Our Children.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then the new one, which during lockdown, I thought, I've got to get these songs out there. Mm-hmm. And this is called Eat Your Triceratops. The title song is a dialogue between a mom tyrannosaur and her toddler who wants to be able to fly. And she says, don't be ridiculous. So it's got, in fact, Never Weather Beaten Sail, one of the first dulcimer tunes I ever played, and Sheltering Tree, which I just sang, and a bunch of songs for the Jackson State Forest, the people saving the Jackson State Forest redwoods.
Wonderful.
So that's Eat Your Triceratops.
I know that you send me satirical songs by email every once in a while. I always enjoy those.
That's the other way. I now have a blog, which you can get to from my website. And the other thing I wanted to do during lockdown, oh my God, I'm going to die, and all these songs are going to die with me, the ones I've written. So I made a list of everything. I put down the lyrics to everything I've ever written. I put them up on my blog. These are mostly satirical songs, some about Mendocino, a lot about the internet, or anything I'm irritated by, I will write a song about. And so if you have things you're irritated by, you might want to check out my blog, and I've probably written a song about it, or if not, you can.
Right, definitely. I want to check in with Erin Mae. You got something for us from comments or questions on the web there, Erin?
Just a lot of love.
Yeah. That's great.
The dulcimer gave me my life. I do not know who I would be if I hadn't been given that first dulcimer. Probably a lab tech somewhere.
It's a dulcimer life.
It's a dulcimer life. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Holly. And I hope to connect with you personally again sometime soon. Maybe I'll have to work to make that happen and pop on up to Mendocino sometime this year.
That would be great. Okay.
Great to see you. Thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.